What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host Marcus, joined as always by my co-host Mason. How you doing tonight, Mason?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to have you joining me live here, in studio, so to speak,
The world headquarters of First and Long College Football,
in the man cave.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, we're uh we're getting somewhere.
We're actually at the TNT Studios in downtown Atlanta. Mr. Turner's family was nice enough to oblige us. Shaq and Charles are in the next room, and so that was exciting to be able to see them.
Yeah,
Before the show started, I told them to hang in there. Eventually, their show would probably grab traction as well as ours has.
yeah.
Of course, they're in the NBA world, and nothing compared to the college football world. Thank you all so much for joining us. We've got the national championship to talk about today. Um, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Ohio State coming in at an 8.5 point favorite so far. That's come down a little bit. I think it opened at 9.5. 45.5 is the over under for that one. So a low scoring game is what Vegas is predicting. So we're going to jump into that. I just wanted to let all you First and Long people know that we are going to, I think, come back on Tuesday night.
Hmm.
We're going to have the national championship Monday night. Tuesday night, we're going to come back on. We're going to react to what we saw in the national championship game. And then we're going to start breaking down some of our offseason stuff. And we're going to go more into the transfer portal stuff. We've been kind of waiting for that moment to like, all right, now's whenever we need to jump into the transfer portal stuff. And so I think we need to get this season wrapped up, put a bow on this thing, and figure out who the champion is for the season. And then from there, I think we can start talking transfer portal stuff. But tons of coaching carousel stuff going on. And if you guys want to bring that up in the comment section, drop that in the comment section now. If you're watching live or if you're watching later, drop it in the comment section. We'd love to chit chat with you guys about that stuff. Um, eh, there's some crazy drama going on, as you could imagine, with Carson Beck. The whole UGA, Miami, Alabama triangle of love there, of course. Bill Belichick hasn't signed his contract in North Carolina, but he's going to be the coach. Don't worry. He's just waiting to see if he can get an NFL job first, right? But have no fear, says the GM of the North Carolina Tar Heels. So we talked about Tom Allen going to Clemson, right, to be the defensive coordinator from Penn State. A lot of moves going on. So we're going to have a lot to talk about next week, right?
Yeah, and don't look now, but the whispers are out there that Mike Bobo might be leaving Georgia or stepping down, I guess, as the offensive coordinator. We'll see. They're just whispers at this point. Not sure. Not sure if that's going to come to fruition or not. There are a lot of Georgia fans who are hopeful of that. I'm not one particularly. I don't think Bobo did a terrible job as the offensive coordinator for Georgia. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of moving parts going on, and I'm excited to break that down next week, right? I think we're still in football mode as far as the 2024 season. Even though we're in 2025, we're trying to crown the 2024 champion here next week, and we've got two bangers coming up between Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, been a great season for both teams. Shout out to all you guys, or at least a couple of you watching now. Big Bucks fan in the comment section says, "Love the show, guys. Stumbled onto it a couple weeks ago." He says Ohio State's winning this one, 31-17. Best of luck to you guys, to all you Bucknut fans out there. And all you Notre Dame fans out there, we do have a little pocket of Notre Dame fans there in Indiana. We've got Indiana Hoosiers fans and we've got Notre Dame fans
Yep.
there in the subscriber base. So good luck to the state of Indiana and the state of Ohio. Mason and we're a couple of Georgia fans, but this isn't a Georgia show. We're just college football fanatics, just like you guys, and we're here to call it like we see it. And we're going to try to do that tonight as we get into this game. Anything else? Any other housekeeping stuff? Y'all hit the like button for us real quick. We're gonna jump into our prediction here in a second. And drop a comment. Like I said, as we go, whether you're watching live or later, we do keep an eye on that. And if you haven't done it yet, I hope that you'll consider hitting the subscribe button. This is our second year here on the First and Long College Football Show. This we're coming down to the end here. This year has been 10 times better than it was last year. I fully anticipate the year 3 on the First and Long College Football Show is going to be our best year yet.
Yeah.
And we're going to do a lot more interactive stuff now that we've built up a little bit of a base. Nothing to, hang our hat on. Our work's not done or anything, but you guys have done a good job liking the videos and commenting and things like that. And, we've grown by 1,500 subscribers, in the last 8 months, right? And that doesn't sound like a lot because it's not a lot in the YouTube world, but it's a lot for us, and it's a lot for a college football channel that only had 500 subscribers, at the start of that 8 months that I was talking about. So we've come a long way, man, and it's all thanks to you guys. And we just enjoyed college football and consumed it and brought it to you and talked about it. So that's easy for us to do. We were going to get on the phone and talk about it anyway. That's the whole reason we started this channel. We were going to do this podcast anyway. We were just going to do it on a two-way line, right?
Without a camera in front of our face and multiple lights that are blinding me at this moment.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. We, of course, have got our college football playoff national championship. As I said, it's going down in Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to be some freezing weather. So if you are headed to the game, be ready and be bundled up because it's going to be a cold week in Atlanta. You better get out of town too quick after the game because we might be having some snow coming in right after that. It's the Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. It's the number 8 seed and the number 7 seed from the 2024 college football season, battling it out on Monday, January 20th of the year 2025. As we said, 8.5 point favorite are the Ohio State Buckeyes, over under set at 45.5. Notre Dame has been on a streak in which they really haven't played that many close games until they got to the college football playoff. They were really, really dominating opponents this season, obviously excluding NIU or whatever Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf they somehow lost to. I still cannot wrap my head around NIU beating Notre Dame this season. But with that being said, Notre Dame has been a run-first football team, Mason, and they've done a really good job of winning the rushing battle in just virtually every single game this season, other than that NIU game, right? Georgia, I think, had more total yards than them, but Notre Dame was able to find other ways against a stingy, Kirby Smart Georgia Bulldogs defense. They were able to find other ways in special teams, and so this team has been. I wouldn't call them super versatile, but we have seen them find other ways to win. The last game they played against Penn State, we saw some explosive plays, right? Some plays over the top that we haven't really seen a ton from Notre Dame. And Mason, it kind of reminds me of Michigan from last year, where we kind of came down the stretch with Michigan and we said, can this team pass to win a national championship? Because we knew they could run the ball well, right? And they could play good defense, much like Notre Dame. And we said, I don't know that if Michigan has that explosive ability to be able to get over the top offensively and win ball games against top level competition week in and week out whenever you get to this point in the season, right? And Notre Dame had kind of proved to us against Penn State that they are able to do that whenever they need to. On the other hand of that, Mason, we've seen Ohio State absolutely. They lost to Michigan at the end of the season. Everybody talked about it. Everybody that wasn't an Ohio State fan, no offense to the Ohio State people, but everybody else chuckled about it because whenever you're the big man on campus, and you skin your knee, right? Everybody's going to point and laugh at you. That's just college football. That's just trash talkers, and things. But Ohio State in that game against Michigan really seemed like they were bound and determined to run the football, play bully ball against Michigan, and it didn't work out for them that day. because they got down in the red zone, needed to make a couple passes. Will Howard throws a couple interceptions, and that game goes the wrong way. Ever since then, they've been pretty dominant. They've been pretty dominant, and they haven't. Their identity all season is really wild. Their identity all season was run the football. We're going to be physical, run the football. Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator. We got all these different running backs and blah blah blah, and everybody knew in the back of their head the whole time that Jeremiah Smith is there, right? Emeka Egbuka is there. All of that groundwork throughout the regular season set them up for one-on-ones on the outside. Specifically, I'm thinking about against Tennessee, where they got one-on-one balls on the outsides, and that's literally what won them that football game and buried Tennessee, the Vols there at the shoe. They've carried that momentum throughout the whole playoff. I thought Texas did a really good job this past game at figuring out a way to slow him down. So, with that being said, I think Notre Dame is a very respectable secondary.
Yes.
And with Texas putting that on film, do you think that Notre Dame now has a very clear way that they can limit this offense? Because, look, I mean, let's be real. Texas had a chance at the end of that game to win it. They really did. The score didn't indicate what it was. 28-14 was the final. But Jack Sawyer runs back a fumble, all the way back for a touchdown, which made it a two-possession game. I mean, let's not forget Texas was driving.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking anything away from Ohio State in that game. Don't get me wrong. Ohio State was the better team and won that game outright, and they deserved to win it. But with that plan on film now, do you think that Notre Dame is able to take what they've seen Texas do and replicate it? Because I think that the secondary is good enough for Notre Dame to be able to replicate it. And I guess the biggest question will be, are they able to hold up against the run with the injuries that they've got? What are your thoughts going into this matchup? I feel, there's a couple of different glaring matchups in this one that I think are the most important. Notre Dame secondary against these wide receivers. Can they do what Texas did? Right. And how does the Notre Dame defense hold up against the running attack of Ohio State if they are able to limit, Jeremiah Smith, Egbuka, Will Howard? Then what? Are they healthy enough to be able to stop the run? And then their offense has to go against that Ohio State defense, which is unbelievable. I haven't even mentioned it. I know you will. The Ohio State defense is probably the best defense in the country.
Yes.
So I haven't even really touched on that yet, and I'll let you do that. What are your thoughts on this game? What are the biggest matchups? I've heard somebody say that Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have a coaching advantage over the coaching staff at Ohio State. Maybe let us know what your thoughts are on the game, and then what are your thoughts on those comments? Because I thought that was pretty interesting today.
That is interesting. Starting off, you nailed it talking about the Notre Dame secondary. That's where that was my first thought when thinking about this Notre Dame defense going up against the Ohio State offense and this just outstanding stable of wide receivers that Ohio State has. It's unlike anything that Notre Dame has faced all season long, Mark. And give me one that comes close. Give me one team that they face that comes close to matching the wide receivers that Ohio State has. That you can't. I mean, are you gonna? USC is probably the closest. With Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch, who both had down years. And I know there was another receiver there. I'm not mentioning, but my point stands that
Yeah.
this is untreaded waters.
Penn State, I don't even think had a wide receiver play in the game. They
They
haven't had any wide receivers all year. They've been doing it with tight ends and running backs all year.
absolutely. So yes, good secondary for sure, but haven't been tested, right? What is that? What is that going to look like? What does Al Golden have up his sleeve defensively? Because you're going to have to win in the secondary. The secondary is going to have to win this game for Notre Dame if they stand a chance. And what the secondary needs to do is win their battle, force Ohio State to run the football, which feeds right into the hands of Notre Dame and that defense and what they really want. They want you running at Xavier Watts, assuming he's healthy. They want you running at that defensive line banged up. I understand that, but the edge of the defensive line is more than capable of slowing down the Russian attack. I think Tyler Rubio stepping in for Riley Mills is a fine backup. I think that they can hold up in the run game. My question is in the passing game. We've seen Will Howard when he's at, when he's at his ceiling, we've seen him thread some balls and hit his receivers who are usually open. He's got, again, the best receiving core in the country. My question is whether or not Notre Dame can slow that side of the offense down, the passing attack, force them to run the football, and then have success in the run game. You still got to stop Travion Henderson and
Yeah.
Quinshawn Judkins, who are both looking like the best running backs in the playoffs, or look like the best running backs throughout the playoffs,
Yeah.
and have heated up since then. Looked really good in the
There's
Texas game.
there's some super talented rushers in this game.
No doubt, no doubt.
Both sides, I mean.
And going to the offensive side for Notre Dame, because we really hadn't touched on that side of the football. Jeremiah Love looks like a guy who just has the will to win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's
Playing
banged
hurt.
up.
Yep.
He said, I can't hurdle anybody. He hurdles 3 guys against Penn State.
Yeah.
And just looks like an absolute baller. He's really fun to watch. They've got a great stable of backs. All 3 of them have their roles, and they perform them well. Offensive line has been playing pretty well for them. I think that Penn State did some things to disrupt that O line, but for the most part, they did what they had to do and got through it. Then you saw Riley Leonard hitting some balls down the field against Penn State, which is something that nobody really knew if he could do that or not.
Right.
We said going into the game against Penn State that Penn State, all they need to do is test Riley Leonard, and they've got a chance at winning the game. Well, that's what happened. They did have a chance, but Riley Leonard won the game. He hit the balls that he needed to hit, and that was really impressive to me. Can he continue to do that going up against Ohio State? Look, as good as the secondary is for Notre Dame, it might be even better for Ohio State. They're really good. I think what you want to do if you're Riley Leonard is, and the wide receivers, I put just as much pressure on them for Notre Dame. They need to be really physical with the secondary of Ohio State. Be very physical at the line of scrimmage. Come up, hit them in the mouth. Don't receive it, because they're a physical bunch, and it's in the secondary for Ohio State. The whole defense is very physical for Ohio State, really.
Yeah.
But if you can make it a physical game, you can draw some penalties, right? And I'm not saying just draw penalties. You're going to have to hit some deep shots too.
Yeah.
But if you're a receiver and you beat Igbinosun, he's gonna pull you down, right? You're gonna get the penalty. If you get a couple steps on him, he's gonna grab some jersey. He's gonna grab your hips. You're gonna get the penalty. So forcing plays like that, I think, could be very strategic, and that boils down to the coaching, right? Like you said. Look, I have the utmost respect for Marcus Freeman and how he's handled himself first time through the playoffs. How this team has handled themselves. They're a very resilient bunch, and they absolutely deserve to be here. Some people are acting like Notre Dame hadn't beat anybody to get to this point. Guys, they've won their last 14 games.
Well, that convinces me that everybody's just going to say that for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
I mean, who have they played? And look, you can't complain at this point. I mean, look, of course, Notre Dame had the easier side of the bracket. We all know that. But the only reason that the bracket was set up that way was because of bogus, automatic 1 through 4 being slid in there, Boise State, Arizona State. I mean, they shouldn't have been in the top 4. I'm sorry. They weren't the top 4 teams. It threw all the seeding off. And I think that that's something that'll get fixed in the future. But people are always just going to complain. They're always going to say, who have they played? I'm just convinced that that's always going to be something.
Well, I thought it was interesting. So I saw today where, and I just hadn't realized it, but I saw today they were showing there was a preview going on. I don't even remember who I was watching, but There was a preview going on. It was saying, number 7 Notre Dame versus number 8 Ohio State, and I was like, dang, that's kind of hard to believe. There were 6 teams ranked higher than these teams in the college football playoffs, and none of them made it to the championship game. That's pretty interesting. I started thinking about it like, okay, rankings are very subjective. It's based on who you played and wins and losses and strength of schedule, I guess, matters. It didn't seem like it mattered this year, but nonetheless, it's a subjective ranking. But when you look at the power rating or power rankings, it's a little bit less subjective, right? I mean, that one
Yeah.
would think, it's based off of who you played, who those people played, and how they played against those people, and blah, blah, blah. What's interesting, though, is based on ESPN's FPI rating, I believe it is, um, based off of the power ranking, this is the number 1 or number 2 team in the country.
Wow.
And it's not set up because of they're the number 1 and like it's a true power ranking.
Hmm.
This is number 1 and number 2 based off of ESPN's power ranking. And Ohio State overtook Texas last week after they beat Texas. Texas was number 1. Ohio State beats them and goes to number 1, but Notre Dame was already at 2 after beating Georgia. So it just kind of goes to show you. I mean, yes, you get more of a sample size with when these teams have played what's going on their 17th game of the season, or I guess 16 for Notre Dame. Well, really 16 for both because neither one played in their conference championship games. But
right.
But nonetheless, we've got the number 1 or number 2 team, at least according to the power rankings of ESPN, which a lot of their ranking systems are flawed, to say the least. But I think that leads me to believe that this is going to be a pretty competitive game in a way, right? And it definitely, I didn't need that to tell me, but I feel like Notre Dame deserves to be here. I think that when you're looking at the coaching advantage, Al Golden's doing a phenomenal job defensively. He's making great adjustments. I think you're going to continue to see some adjustments being made in this national championship game. The chess match between Al Golden and Chip Kelly is going to be explosive. I don't know who it's going to be explosive for. I think it's just going to be good on good and a true this entire game to me is going to be a true physical game. And if that's the case, I think that it favors Notre Dame, right? If Notre Dame's going to win this football game, it needs to be like 17-14, right? I think anybody would say that who's watching college football right now. You would say, yeah, if it's low scoring, that's the path to victory for Ohio State. If we're getting into a shootout, that's not good for Notre Dame.
Right.
That to me, it reminds me of the USC game where you needed 2 pick sixes to win that football game. This ain't USC. This is a really good defense. You can't do that against a team like Ohio State. So to me, if it's lower scoring, I think that favors Notre Dame. If Ohio State gets out to a 2-touchdown lead, I think it's over. I just don't feel like this offense can make up that big of a gap against this defense. They could against other teams, USC, but not against the number 1 defense in the country. They really have to play to their ceiling to win this football game. I think that the margin for error is just not there, and Vegas is telling you that with the 8.5-point spread.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and the total is so low. And that tells me something here too. I'm interested to see how these two offensive lines perform against the opposing defensive lines. I think that is going to tell us a lot. And something really interesting in pretty much all of these playoff games. And one of y'all in the comment section, y'all correct me if I'm wrong here. Mason, maybe you can think of one, but there's only one game that I can think of since conference championship weekend. And the game that I'm thinking of is Penn State and Oregon conference championship. That's the only game in which the team that ran the ball for the most yards hasn't won.
Interesting.
I can't think of another one. I've been keeping track of it all college football playoff. You've heard me say it. The teams that are running the ball effectively, the most effectively, are winning all of these games.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, just about. So whoever is able to rush for more yards in this game, I think, has got the clear advantage. That's been Notre Dame's recipe all year. And when we've seen Ohio State try to do that and have that as their identity, it hasn't been great. We watched them. Remember that game against Nebraska where Ohio State struggled mightily in that game. Ohio State was 1 for 10 on third down that day.
Yeah.
And ran for just around 100 yards that day. And that was a good defensive line for Nebraska, one that I think is very comparable to what they're going to see against Notre Dame on Monday. Injuries or not, Notre Dame has showed me they've got some dudes waiting in the wings. And not to mention they're going against an offensive line for Ohio State that's banged up.
Sure.
Not to say Notre Dame's isn't banged up. We don't even know who's playing left tackle for Notre Dame in this game Monday. Yeah. So I'm not saying Notre Dame doesn't have these issues, but that leads me to my point. Really, these two offensive lines against these two defensive lines, I'm giving the edges to both of these defensive lines, and that is a recipe for some punts. And I think whoever can play better special teams is going to give their team a really good shot. You got to flip the field. Let me tell you something. As a Georgia fan, we watched the Notre Dame game. Georgia did a horrible job flipping the field when they had the opportunity against Notre Dame. They did a horrible job with it, and now turnovers provided some short fields. So you have to kind of admit that whenever that's the case. But when you have an opportunity, Ohio State Buckeyes, when you have an opportunity to do it, you have to make Notre Dame drive 90. Because if you give them an opportunity to drive 50, they can do that. They can hit runs, and because their whole thing is three yards in a pile of dust. And when they get that going, it's so hard to stop. Riley Leonard is like a greased pig. You can't get your hands on him. I mean, you just can't. I mean,
he needs to run the ball about 15 or 20 times in this game.
Yeah, well,
I really think he does.
He runs like a nerd spaz. Like he's having a nerd spaz when he runs. Yeah. Like he's scared of germs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like he's scared to get hit.
And I think that's what they mean by running. Yeah, exactly. Like if I run fast enough, they can't tackle me.
Yeah.
Type thing, That's
what I used to do. That's why I'm sitting.
That's the recipe. That's what Jerry Rice said. That was his thing. He's like, man, I hate getting hit.
Yeah.
So I would do my best to make sure I didn't get tackled. He's going to be tackled. He's probably going to be hit pretty hard a few times. There's going to be some hitting in this game. Yeah. Sonny Styles is going to be coming and flying in, popping people. Kaiser's going to be popping people. It's going to be a physical showdown. And I think the defenses both have a little bit of an advantage. It's all going to be predicated upon, I think the defense for Ohio State has a little bit more of an advantage over their opponent in the Notre Dame offense versus the other way around, I think. It's all going to be predicated upon Notre Dame playing good secondary defense against those awesome wide receivers we talked about. They're the X factor. If Ohio State is to win and cover this, it's not going to be done just on the backs of the running backs.
Right.
You're going to have the full offense in effect to be able to cover this spread.
Ohio State.
And I think Notre Dame can take something away.
Yeah, I trust Al Golden to figure something out.
Something.
Ohio State, to me, though, is a team that if they and I credit Chip Kelly again. We're talking a lot about the coaches in this matchup because I do think that this is two of the best coaching groups in the country, and that's why they're here. Couple that with the best roster in the country, and you got a recipe for a just an absolute empire, really, of a season. It seems like, but this offense for Ohio State, if they get rolling, if they can click on all cylinders early in the football game, like the first couple of drives, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
I heard Joel Klatt talk about how they're like a flywheel, and if you don't really understand what a flywheel is, it's something that's very slow to start, but it's like a really heavy gear, like a train, on a track. Once it gets going, you can't hardly stop it. There's no slowing it down. It takes a long time to slow that thing down.
Old Klatt Daddy.
That's what this Ohio State offense is. I thought it was really well put. We saw that against Oregon, right?
Yeah.
That defense really didn't have an answer. Notre Dame's defense is much different than Oregon. So Notre Dame's defense is fast, not quite as fast as Oregon's, I would say. But this isn't a finesse defense. This is a defense that wants to come up and hit you in the mouth. Very physical. I think that Schuler has to have a really big game here, Mark. He was a big reason why they had success
Yeah.
against Georgia. And then against Penn State, he kind of got beat a good bit. The tight ends wore him out. Number 8
Mm.
for Notre Dame kind of wore him out. And he was getting beat on some balls. So I think he's got to step back into the success that he had against Georgia here against Ohio State, and that could be a catalyst, I think, for the defense here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess we might as well come on out with it, and well, let's answer our question real quick that we kind of started the this whole segment off with. Who do you think's got the coaching advantage here? I'm just sitting here looking at it from a bird's eye view, and you've got Marcus Freeman against Ryan Day, and Day has obviously coached in bigger games. The problem or the flack that each coach has caught about certain moments in their tenures at their respective colleges has been not winning the big games for Day. And for Marcus Freeman, it's been the opposite. It's been not winning the games that don't matter.
Yeah.
And what's your take on that? Who's got the edge there? Maybe we'll just kind of go one at a time here, I guess, and to kind of talk about it. But and it doesn't have to be this long spill, but Marcus Freeman kind of seems like what's it called whenever it's like a young, super young, talented.
Like a
Um,
savant.
yeah, I mean, there's got to be something more to him being as young as he is and being in the position that he's in at Notre Dame right now. He's obviously because he didn't get hired for experience.
Do you think there's some blackmail involved?
I think I read that he has got something on the Pope.
Yeah, is that
And
what it is?
but I mean seriously, like for him to be in the situation that he's at, he's just a couple years older than me, right? Just a few years older than me and you. Um, it's not the experience he got hired for. He's obviously some type of football genius,
Mhm.
right? Ryan Day, on the other hand, was kind of brought in more on with Chip Kelly and through the NFL and kind of has worked his way to this position. Who do you think's got the advantage? I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here, really.
Yeah. To me, I would say so. There's two sides of this, to me at least. There's from a Georgia fan perspective, right? I got no skin in the game when it comes to this football game. That's about to be played here.
Right.
I like Marcus Freeman more than I like Ryan Day. And I think most people in America would say that. I think that the players for their respective programs would say that. I think that Notre Dame's players like Marcus Freeman more than Ohio State's players like Ryan Day. And I think that that's kind of going in line with what you were saying.
Yeah.
How did Marcus Freeman end up here? I think it's because he's 38 and he relates really well to the players in comparison to, and I don't know how old Ryan Day is. I'm assuming in his late 40s, but
No, with
40
this
and
with that dark of a beard.
well, all right, man. How long before we see him on a Just for Men commercial? By the way, that
I don't know what he's waiting for.
right, but likability I think is in Freeman's favor. Experience is obviously in Day's favor, which I would almost always side with experience over most other aspects in some cases. Um, I think that the coaching advantage right now, if you're just talking head coach right now, I would have to give it to Ryan Day.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty even. I mean, he Ryan Day is obviously, um, wise beyond his years if you judge him by the gray in his beard. Um, but he hasn't really won a whole lot more big games than Marcus Freeman has. I mean, we look back at the game that happened last year between Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman. Um, that game was neck and neck. It come down right to the very end, right? Ohio State scores at the very end of the game to beat Notre Dame last year. So it's a interesting matchup, and it's certainly interesting because Marcus Freeman is an Ohio State guy, right? So that obviously adds a whole nother element to this thing that we haven't even mentioned yet. But Um, I mean, potentially, maybe one day the coach of Ohio State, possibly. You know what I'm saying? Like Ohio State may be playing their future head coach on Monday.
Hmm.
You know, I certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't be one to rule that out in the crazy world that we live in now. Give me a break. I mean, I could certainly see that happening. Um, what do you think about Denbrock against that Ohio State defense? The Notre Dame, because I mean, look at what Denbrock did last year with LSU.
Yeah.
Going and bringing a Heisman Trophy back to LSU again. By the way, LSU has had a lot of luck with the Heisman trophies here lately. Do have the one national championship to show for it, but it wasn't the offense's fault that LSU didn't win more games last year. That's for damn sure.
No.
And then Notre Dame gets their hands on them, and lo and behold, I mean, it's not been a great passing attack for Notre Dame, but I don't think anybody brought Riley Leonard in and thought, well, there's the next Tom Brady.
Well,
So
they may have thought that initially, and we saw them struggle against Texas A&M
yeah,
and then lose to NIU. And to me, that's when the transformation happened for Mike Denbrock in the offense, where they said, "All right, Riley Leonard, we saw what you did at Duke. Let's do more of that. We'll try to evolve as weeks go on and have more of a passing attack as up to really the USC game. I think we saw a pretty good bit
yeah,
of passing there, mostly defensive scores though even, but really up until last week that was to me the best passing performance that we saw from Riley Leonard,
yeah.
and the offense. So it's tough to say. I think I want to judge this based off of the offense and not the coach. I don't know what Mike Denbrock is with Riley Leonard. I think that's maybe a little bit of a mismatch, if I'm honest. But I still give Chip Kelly the edge there as well as the offensive coordinator. I think he's again, I'm siding with experience in a lot of ways and where he's been in his career. But who knows? Maybe we're looking back on Mike Denbrock as the next Todd Monken in 2 years or something like that. So I could definitely see it. Both outstanding offensive coordinators, though.
Richie Dubs, Mr. Bucknuts, they're in the comment section. They said we don't know football from a basketball. Um, Mason, the football is the one that is kind of oval shaped, and the basketball is more round.
Is that
That's
okay?
the one that it was the old peach basket.
I'll
You
yeah,
know,
I'll write that down. I'm gonna make a note of that.
maybe we could look that up after the show and
Yeah,
figure out
yeah.
what the difference is between those two. Um, because we just don't know ball. Um,
Talk about a man's beard, and all of a sudden, you just don't know. You don't know football. You can't talk about a man's beard.
Yeah, from the fan base that was ready to fire him like 5.5 minutes ago,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I don't take too much stock in a bunch of shit talkers from Ohio. Only
Mm-hmm.
two things come out of Ohio, right? Y'all know the old saying, don't you?
What's that?
Heifers, and I can't say the other word. It's the F word, but it doesn't end in CK.
Yeah.
And I don't see any heifers right now. I only see the other word.
Mm.
And they're in the comment section. So, hey, y'all take a couple of those and call me tomorrow. Doctor's orders. Um, Look, let's make our predictions. What do you think is going down in this one? I think it's a closer game than what Vegas was predicting. I think a touchdown is more accurate. I think Ohio State's got the edge here. Um, they've just got more options offensively. And we talked about Notre Dame being able to take something away from Ohio State offensively. I do think Notre Dame is able to take something away, but Ohio State has got the total package. As long as the offensive line shows up and does what they need to do, at least on an average scale,
Yeah.
I think they're able to run that they're more flexible, I guess is the right word. They can run it or they can pass it. Notre Dame, on the other hand, I'm confident that Ohio State's defense is able to take something away from them. And there's only one thing to take away from them, Mason. It's running the football. And I think Ohio State is going to be able to be successful stuffing the run up. And it's going to come down, I think, to Notre Dame being able to hit some explosive plays over the top. I'm less confident that Notre Dame is able to do that against Ohio State than I was against them being able to do that against Penn State, which they were able to do some. I'm less confident of them being able to do that against Ohio State on Monday. I like Ohio State to win it by about a touchdown. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. The what do they call it? Transitive properties would lead you to believe that Notre Dame stands a real chance at winning this game. And what I mean by that is, Notre Dame beat Georgia, right? Georgia beat Texas twice, pretty handedly, and Texas kind of almost beat Ohio State, right? It was a pretty close game. Um, so
Not allowed to say that.
therefore, Notre Dame is playing better than Ohio State. Obviously, that's not the truth, right? I do think that Notre Dame has a chance to win the football game. It would be ludicrous to suggest that there's just no chance, right? They're here for a reason. However, the margin of for error is so small
Yeah,
for Notre Dame.
I
It's
agree.
really tough to bet uh, with Notre Dame in this game. It's really tough for me to even see them covering in a lot of ways, even at 8.5 points. I do think that it is going to end up around that. 7 to 10 points seems about right. But if you're asking me to choose, I'm going to have to choose Ohio State winning this game by more than 8.5 points. How many times have we seen a national championship kind of turn into a blowout?
Yeah.
And it's really been the past few years, or
Most of the playoff games, the majority.
right, and it's really been, gosh, I guess you'd have to go back to 2018 was the last really competitive national championship. 2021 Georgia versus Alabama was pretty competitive, but Georgia ended up winning by 18 points when it was all said and done. So to me, I got to pick the team that's more heavily favored in this one, and I think that they're favored for a reason. This is why all of the seniors on that defense for Ohio State came back to play football for their senior year, for their extra senior year in some cases. Um, they are the favorite. They have been the favorite really from a roster standpoint all year long. This is the team preseason that we looked at and said, wow, that's yeah, they stacked together. Once they got Caleb Downs, I think everybody really took notice and said, all right, yeah, that's on paper that's the best defense in the country,
Yeah.
and they played like it throughout the year. And to me, this team, I don't want to say deserves to win because that's to be determined, right? We gotta see this last
Got to go
16
win it.
minutes of college football to see who really deserves to win. But I think that really when you look at the coaching staff and the roster that this Ohio State team has put together, um, if not now, when? I mean, it really is that sort of scenario to me for
Yeah.
Ohio State. You're going to lose 10 out of these 11 starters on defense next year. You kind of have to win with them now. You're going to lose your
Hmm.
quarterback next year. Let's see what you can do with the best roster in college football. I got to put my money on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I like everything you said there. Jim Knowles over the last 3 years has just done a really, really good job with that defense, and I think this is the climax of that. I think we're at the kind of the mountaintop of it takes years to build a defense and build an identity like they've built on defense. It was just a few years ago. Everybody said Ohio State's soft. They only, it's a finesse offense with the soft defense and soft lines of scrimmage. That's not the identity of this team anymore. I'm firmly believe that. I think it's going to be a pretty decent game. I'm excited to see it. I think it'll be low scoring for sure. Under the 44 and a half, I don't know about that. We'll see. Gonna need some special teams magic if you're Notre Dame in this one, certainly. But we're both on the Ohio State side of this one. Uh, Guys, we're like I said, we're going to be on Tuesday night. Come and join us. We'll be live again. Probably shoot for around 8 p.m. Tuesday night. And we'll have a better plan of what we're going to be doing through the off season and everything then. So we'll be sure to announce it to you guys. That way, whenever we'll be on every week, we're going to have tons of off season content. So we want you guys to come and hang out with us. Obviously, won't be on as often as we were during the season. We were on 3 days a week, pretty much
4
throughout
days
the
a week.
3-4 days a week, throughout the whole season. So we will scale that back a bit, but we're still going to be here on the First and Long College Football Show, hanging out with you guys. We certainly do appreciate all of you coming and hanging out with us in the comment section. We do appreciate it, and good luck to all the Ohio State and all the Fighting Irish fans. We wish you the best of luck. May the best man win. It's been a great season with you guys, and I hope that you all have a great night. We'll see you Tuesday night.
Thanks. Y'all have a good night.